Hey everybody, it's Kris from Kris Beat Cancer, and today my guest needs no introduction, so she's not getting one.
Good.
Hi, person.
Hi.
I'm just kidding. So Kris Carr is a superstar cancer thriver and global wellness leader. In 2003, she was diagnosed with stage 4. Hang on, I need some help with this. Stage 4 epithelioid hemangioendothelioma by a doctor that looked a lot like this puppet.
You didn't tell me you were doing puppets. I would have brought my puppets.
That's all I got. That's all I got with the puppet.
That was awesome.
I have a friend who owns a puppet business. Like, he's a puppet distributor. So he doesn't like do puppet shows, but he sells puppets like all over the world. And I was like, hey dude, you got a doctor puppet? And he said, yeah. So this is Dr. Moody, and Dr. Moody might be making some more appearances.
Okay, cool, excellent.
Not in this
Hi, Dr.
interview.
Moody.
Maybe in other videos I make. Whatever. Okay, I totally got off track. Kris has written multiple best-selling books, including the New York Times bestsellers Crazy Sexy Diet and Crazy Sexy Kitchen. She has an amazing blog at chriscarr.com, which I've been a subscriber of longer than any other blog. Since around 2009.
Yay!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Back when it was called Crazy Sexy Life.
Yep, and before that it was crazysexycancer.blogspot.com.
Okay, that was before my time. Yeah, the blogspot.
Before I had a clue.
So, what else do I need to say about you? Oh, Kris is hosting the Hay House Healing Cancer World Summit, October 17th through the 23rd, which I'm thrilled to be a part of. And there's a link to sign up below this video. Or if you're watching on YouTube, click to the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, click the show notes to get the link to sign up for the Healing Cancer World Summit, which is going to be amazing. And aside from that, aside from the fact that we both were diagnosed with cancer in 2003, we both said no to chemo, we both radically changed our lives. We both consumed ridiculous amounts of raw food and juices, both became famous health and wellness bloggers, and are both named Kris. We have very little in common.
Except we always wear the same colors when we see each other on Skype. That's another thing people should know.
I've been dreading this interview because we have nothing to talk about.
Nothing.
I don't know what we're going to talk about. All right, so at vulnerability time, Kris, you, and I both spoke on the original Healing Cancer World Summit back in 2011, which was hosted by our friend Kevin Gianni, who his wife founded Anne Marie Skincare. A lot of my friends and followers and yours too know them from Anne Marie, and he used to be a blogger at Renegade Health. So anyway, we were both on this summit, and I already knew who you were because I'd been following you for a couple of years at least, and I really wanted to connect with you. And of course, Kevin would have introduced us had I asked, but I didn't ask. And we didn't meet until, and you didn't ask either, by the way, but that's okay. But when we didn't meet until last year, officially, like 6 years later. And the reason I didn't ask Kevin to introduce us, which I don't think I've told you this, is because at that time, okay, you had this documentary film out, you had some best-selling books. She's like hanging out with Oprah, and I have like this little blog with like 100 readers, and I just thought she's too busy for another friend.
That's not true.
Yeah, and
when we met.
Well, wait, and I was also insecure, and I had such great respect for you and like what you had done, and I was a little bit jealous too, and I also didn't want to be let down because I had met other influencers who were successful people or whatever who I looked up to, and then they turned out to be like awful. And so I kind of wanted Kris, I kind of kept you at like a distance because I thought she's great and I don't want to know if she's not great. This is 100% true.
I love this.
And it's stupid, and I'm publicly admitting how stupid it was for me to not just have reached out, and I regret that we've only been friends for like a year and some change or something when we probably would have been friends much longer.
Well, when we first met, I think probably all of that went away because I immediately was like hugging you, and I'm like, I'm so happy to know you. I've been a fan of yours, and I'm so proud of you, and I look up to you, and I love your stuff, and like, hi, you. I've been waiting for this day.
And I was like, yay, me too. Yes. So here we are. And I know a lot of people know, I don't know, a lot of people know who you are. A lot of people know your story, but then there's people that don't. And so I'd love for you to tell it. And I'm going to probably ask you a lot of questions that sound like I don't know your story at all, but I'm just trying to think about people who haven't heard it and what they may be thinking as you're telling it. But
absolutely,
I learned something about you when I was just kind of polishing up to be a really professional interviewer that I am, that you were a Bud Light girl in a Super Bowl, couple Super Bowl commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's like pretty awesome.
I was always the funny sidekick, though. I was the comic relief. I wasn't like the big va-va-voom Bud girl, but I was the one who brought the thunder and the laughter.
Are they online?
I could probably send you some links.
Can we put those in the show notes?
Yeah, I think to your point, I was on such a different track when I was diagnosed, but I was also in the process of changing my career and following my heart more, and I had been performing since the time I was a kid, and I moved to New York when I was 19 and got my first agent not long after that. I was a professional dancer and actress, and I was also an acting teacher, and so for me, advertising always paid the bills. I had huge aspirations to be a big movie star, and that never happened, and I'm so freaking grateful that never happened. But I was really, really great at selling products that I would no longer sell people. So I did many, 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 many television commercials, and then when I realized I had a knack for it, I got a job teaching at NYU, teaching students how to do on-camera acting for TV commercials.
What's the commercial that you sort of regret the most, or maybe most embarrassing?
I think I played a cockroach once. Like my head was on a cockroach body. That's no lie. I became union and made my first big paycheck, and ultimately it was so great that I was union because when I was diagnosed, I had really awesome health insurance. But it was because I could do this. It's just because I could do that.
And I can't do that.
I did that for
I can't raise one eyebrow.
Yeah, I can do it. So that made me a whole hell of a lot of money. But on the 17th hour of the shoot, I was like, I can't live it.
It's malfunctioning.
It's done. So I was on a different path, and I knew that I wanted to change my life, and I knew something was coming because I'd kind of gotten sick of pretending to be somebody I wasn't, and waiting for somebody to give me an opportunity to express myself. And creativity has always been a very important part of my life, and I think it's been a huge part of my healing journey. And so I was transitioning to being behind the camera, and I was making my first short documentary when
talk about that.
So I just got sick of pilot seasons and sick of rejections, and I still love doing TV commercials, but I had gone back to school for photography, and I'd opened up this little photography business, and I really loved telling stories, either in print or through documentary photography and filmmaking. And I wanted to be the director, and I wanted to tell other people's stories, not just my own. And it wasn't my story at the time. I didn't have a story. I was still reading scripts and pretending to be somebody. And so I had this plan to slowly leave acting and save enough money so that I could, but continue to do my TV commercials so I could pay the bills. And I was, again, making this little film. And then I got diagnosed, and everything changed. It was Valentine's Day in 2003, and I have this very rare cancer, epithelial angioendothelioma, which is a sarcoma.
What were the symptoms of that?
The thing about my disease, which is kind of crazy, is it it really is this kind of watch and wait, or as I like to say, watch and live experience, because it can be slow growing, it can be aggressive, it can start slow growing and become aggressive. You really have to get a baseline to understand how it's going to behave, and again, that can change. So many patients don't have symptoms, and oftentimes it can be found kind of randomly. Some patients do. It depends on where it is in the body. For me at the time, it was like, I don't know if I had been symptomatic before, because I was the type of person who my limbs would have to be hanging off to get me to go to the doctor.
Me too. No, I was the same way.
So I was like, it's gas.
So you had weird, funny, just funny feelings. Any pain or just kind of discomfort?
Yeah, I had pain in my side, and so the disease is in my liver and both of my lungs. It started in my liver and then it metastasized to both organs. And so the tumors in my liver are much bigger than the tumors in my lungs. And maybe I don't know what was going on, but for some reason I was having these pretty intense pains. And I went to my GP thinking like it was gas. I had problems with constipation because I never ate a vegetable to save my life. And I wasn't drinking water, and I preferred drinking scotch. And there's a whole lot of other things going on.
Were you smoking cigarettes too?
I was smoking cigarettes. Yeah. So having a lot of fun in New York City. That's all I'll say about that. And so I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I recently gave a talk where I talked about, I wasn't a wellness warrior back then. I wasn't even a wellness wannabe, honestly. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to figure out my career, meet the guy, get the house. Like, I wanted to get started with my life. So taking care of myself was always something I guess I thought I would do later when I needed to.
I was the same exact way. Yeah, same exact, very ambitious. I was a real estate investor, and a musician. So writing songs, playing music, trying to build this real estate business, and not take care of myself.
No, you think it's like later, like get the Benjamins in the bank, make something of yourself, and then later you'll learn about fiber. Mm-hmm. It's like, isn't that how it's supposed to go?
Yes. Later you will learn about fiber.
Later you will learn. So anyway, I wasn't feeling well, and I finally hauled myself to the doctor, and he said, it could be your gallbladder. That's what it seems like based on the symptoms that you're describing. Perhaps we'll have to take it out. Let's take a look. And so he did an ultrasound, and the ultrasound came back with all these lesions all over my liver. And I often joke about this. I didn't know what lesions were. I wondered if they were cuts and how I freaking cut my liver, and wondered if maybe scotch cut my liver. I was not sure how the heck I got there. But then he said, lesions are tumors. And as soon as I heard that, I was alone at the time, and I called my parents and I said, something very serious is happening. I'm not sure where this is going, but you need to come to New York. And my dad actually recently told me, because he's in our summit, because recently he's gone through his own cancer journey, that he made like a U-turn like on the freeway. Like, he did such an illegal traffic move, and my dad recycles roads for a living. So like following the road rules is very important to my father. So I'm like, really? Wow.
You drove across the grass?
You did that? Wow, for me? So anyway, then I got a CAT scan, and they found out that there were more tumors in my lungs, so it had metastasized. But we didn't know if it was, cancer yet. And I got my biopsy, and it came back this very strange sarcoma that nobody had heard of. And, I think when we had our awesome interview for chriscar.com, I was talking about how this is that period where patients should really, if they can, slow it down. Because I have such a strange disease that only affects like maybe a couple hundred people per year in the US, there are only a few places that I think would be qualified to actually talk about the type of care you should get and understand what the prognosis is and how we should track it and how it, usually goes down. But I didn't go to those places at first. I had to become my own patient advocate and do a lot of research with the help of my friends and family. Because the first doctor that I spoke to suggested a triple organ transplant.
So like new lung transplant?
Yeah, like both of my lungs and my liver.
Oh my!
I'm like,
I don't even know they did. I didn't even know they did lung transplants.
I don't know either, but I realized at that moment, like, I don't know much. I'm a newbie. Like, after we realized what it was and that it was indeed cancer and sarcoma, but that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. And then the next hospital I went to just didn't really know. So I went to another one, and I did 4 or 5 opinions. I can't remember.
We're going to take your head and put it on a new body.
Yeah. That might have been easier than some of the things they were suggesting. Dr. Moody, that's a great idea. I like you, Dr. Moody.
So hang on, though. Let me just say, kudos to you for even having enough, I guess, rational thought at the time to be like, I need to get a second opinion, because a lot of patients don't, right? They one doctor tells them one thing, and they're just like, I guess this is what I have to do.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think that there's 2 things. I've actually never thought about this until this moment, but I think there's 2 things in my favor. One, I don't listen well when I don't like what I'm hearing.
I have that. Also have that.
Yeah. So yeah, you definitely have that. It's another thing we have.
Maybe it's a Kris thing, or
it could be. It totally could be. And 2, I might not remember this all the time, but when I do remember it, I'm very tapped into my intuition. I think we all are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We just forget. And so I was on my hands and knees, going within and just being still and listening for the direction. And for me, it was keep looking. These folks are well-meaning, but they are not the co-captain of your healing team. And so I kept looking. The next hospital that I went to gave me 10 years to live, and that was like a long time. They're like, look, you're lucky, you have 10 years to live. And at the time I was 31. I just turned 47. That wasn't good enough. I was like, that's not enough time. I know that's not 10 months, and I'm grateful for that, but that's not enough time. I'm not good here either. And they also suggested radical treatments to potentially slow it down, but nothing would put me in remission. So because we didn't know how fast it was moving, that didn't make sense either. And so I finally found the doctor who, in my opinion, knows the most about my disease. And at the time, he wasn't taking new patients. And I was just relentless about trying to get in to see him, and I finally did. And he's been my doctor ever since. I've never done treatment. So next year will be my 16th year of living with cancer. So I'm 15 years now living with stage 4 cancer. Yeah.
You're okay. Let me interrupt to say some things. One is, I hope I don't forget the 2 things because they're very different. But one is like, gosh, it's such an important lesson, I think, for every patient to find the doctor that's really is an expert in your disease, but B, that supports you, right? Like you just said, that is your co-captain. Doctor is not the captain. You're the captain.
That's right.
Of your ship, and the doctor needs to be someone who supports you, that doesn't intimidate you and use fear and fight you. And like if the appointments are stress and fear producing, it's like, that's not the right guy or gal.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. And so often we give away all of our power because we think that they know more than us, and in some ways they do know a lot more than us, but nobody knows more about your body than you, and nobody knows your intuition like you.
Yeah.
And so that's why
life.
And so that's why it is a very, it's a partnership finding that doctor. And as you said, people who will respect you, and they may not go for all of the decisions that you want to make, but they're going to treat you in a way that's respectful. That was so important to me. And my doctor at Dana-Farber is that person. So he said to me, look, I don't know if you're going to like what I'm about to say, because back in those days, Kris, I had never been exposed to people like you. I had never been exposed to eventually who I would become. My only understanding of cancer is you get it, and if it's stage 4, you're probably going to die. And the only thing that you can do is surgery, chemo, and radiation, and that may or may not work, right? And so I had never been exposed to patients who live with cancer like I do as a chronic disease. And so he was the first person that came along saying, like, I'm going to mess your head up a little bit. I don't think we should do anything. Now, Dana-Farber, Harvard, he teaches at Harvard. Like, he's saying to me, I don't think we should do anything. And I was excited and terrified because I really wanted it to go away. I didn't think that I could breathe again and feel peace in my heart and in my mind unless it was gone. And so that was like a radical idea. And
okay, that's interesting though. So it was his idea. And and it wasn't you like saying, hey, I'd rather watch and wait. He was the one that brought it up first.
He's the one that brought it up. Like Mr. Western white coat is the one that brought it up.
What an amazing guy he is for doing that.
Yeah, such a great guy. And we've subsequently gone to some great Bruce Springsteen concerts. Like I found a gem, and I say that because they're out there, you know. So he said, let's watch and wait and track you. We need to get a baseline, and then you go off and live your life, and make the most of your life. Take care of yourself. And again, this was a new concept for me too, and I didn't know what that meant. So for those people who know my story, I literally went from the hospital to Whole Foods, and my parents were with me. We all grabbed shopping carts. I was crying, looking at vegetables, like, I have to eat these things.
No, hang on though.
Oh my God.
Why did you go straight to? Did you have any inkling that that's what you needed to do?
It came from within.
You just knew. Yeah, it's just instinct. Like, I've got to start eating vegetables. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like, I'm smoking cigarettes. I love Burger King. I drink way too much. I work in a bar. I have a very stressful job that's filled with rejection and feast or famine all the time. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of issues with anxiety and depression and self-loathing. And I'm not overall, like, if I were to do an inventory of my life at that point, I wasn't that happy, and I didn't feel good. Like, I was chronically constipated. I had eczema. I had inflammation. I had all of these other things that, we can talk about, that all of this kind of adds up. And we think about, 5 to 10% of cancers are genetic, and the rest are a result of lifestyle and environment and things that aren't always in our control or on our radar at the time, right?
And chronic inflammation, right? And those sort of inflammatory diseases and little ailments that you had were precursors.
Yeah.
There's little signs that your body was in an environment where cancer could possibly thrive.
Yeah. And you know what? I got to tell you, Kris, I knew something was coming, talking about connecting with my intuition.
Felt it.
I did. Yeah. And 2 years prior to the experience, I remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, if you keep going the way you're going to get cancer.
Wow.
And it was like, so all of this wisdom was within for me. And so when I went to Whole Foods, it was just basically like, what I'm doing isn't working. That store has things that are healthy. Don't know how to use them, but you should maybe go in that store. And
where are the healthy people at?
Where are they at? Because they're definitely not at the Blues Bar that I'm working at.
They're not a great bar. Castle?
So anyway, long story short, there was a book there, and it started with a book, like your journey. It was a different book at the time, but eventually it led me to raw foods, and I tried many different things, from macrobiotics to raw foods and so on. And I grabbed that book and put a lot of vegetables in my cart, not knowing how to use them, not knowing how to make them, not knowing that they didn't have a shelf life like Spam, you know what I mean, like, or canned goods. I'm like, wait, you go out so fast.
Macaroni.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I bought cookbooks, and I started to take weekend workshops, and I didn't have you. Did they have YouTube back then, Kris? I don't
did
remember.
not, Kris. No.
Yeah, they
There was no
didn't
YouTube.
have YouTube. Okay, they didn't have YouTube,
Right.
and there was no social media
The
and whatnot.
CIA.
Yeah.
I have YouTube. No, YouTube didn't start. Look, there was no YouTube, and the internet in 2000. It was early 2003 for you. It was December 2003 for me. And so my healing journey was really started in January 2004. But even 2004, there weren't even videos on the internet, really. Because
right.
YouTube wasn't there. I mean, yeah, the internet wasn't helpful to me.
No, it wasn't helpful. And the books that I found at the time were geared towards people who were older and folks who weren't, didn't have the sense of humor I had, and the life goals that I had. And so I was finding stuff that was basically like, you've been through the second divorce, your kids are in college, like you're older and you have cancer. And I'm like, whoa, I'm at the prime of my life, and I'm not sure how to navigate, not only in the kitchen, but like socially, spiritually. I don't even know if I know what my priorities are, the things that truly matter to me. And so going back to that time, we can talk about the food and whatnot, but I knew, like I said to you at the top of this conversation, that creativity was part of my healing. And I knew that telling my story would help me understand my story, would help me create a new story for myself for however long I had. I picked up the camera and I just started this video diary. I started shooting 2 weeks after I was diagnosed. And then not long after that, I realized I wanted to connect with other young women who were going through their own cancer journey. Some of them going through traditional treatments, chemo, surgery, radiation. Some of them who are in the end stages of their disease, one of which this incredible woman named Oni, who didn't make it. And I followed them for a year each. And then my journey for 4 years. And for me, this was my medicine, making this project, and also learning about food and stress reduction and exercise and all the things that you teach your awesome followers and readers and viewers. That was the treatment for me. And for a long time, I wanted to be cured. Like, I still had this belief that if I wasn't cured, I couldn't share the story. It's part of the reason why it took 4 years to make, because I kept pushing the timeline, thinking, well, maybe at the next scan it'll be gone. And then I had to come to terms with the fact that I might have this forever, but just because I'm not cured doesn't mean I'm not healthy. I'm living with cancer. I'm thriving with stage 4 cancer. My disease is the slow-moving variety right now. And everything I've been doing for the last 15 years is to try to tip the odds in my favor of keeping it that way.
This is perfect. This is a perfect place for me to interrupt. Because the other thing I was going to say about you earlier is that, like, you described yourself as a 15-year survivor. And, like, to me, and I think to so many people, I mean, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people whose lives you have touched, inspired, encouraged. Like, you're so much more than a survivor, right? Like, you're like a beacon of hope and light in a very dark place for people who, they just don't know. No one's told them that you can thrive, right? In spite of a diagnosis, in spite of a disease or whatever. And the thing that you said about waiting 4 years, I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. Even though my scans were coming back clean, I still was afraid to tell my story and didn't start the Kris Beat Cancer blog until 6.5 years after my diagnosis. And I regret not turning the camera on and documenting the process, like you did, which is so wonderful. And when your movie came out, I was like, dang it, why didn't I think of that? But anyway, so I just wanted to say, yeah, I mean, there is no better example in the world of someone who has just absolutely turned their diagnosis into just I can't even articulate it, right? You turned it into something like that just transformed your life, impacted so many countless other people, given so much hope and encouragement to people. So
thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you
that's
so much.
why I'm a big fan.
Well, right back at you. If we had met each other earlier, I would have told you, tell it now. Don't be like me.
Yeah.
But we both had to go through that experience, and I think that it makes us better patient advocates, because I think everybody can understand feeling like, you can't really get on with your life until you have this sort of mythical bow around it, and that's just not true. And life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? Isn't that John Lennon's quote? And It's messy and it's mysterious and it's magical. And for me, it also includes cancer, but it's no longer the thing that I think about when I first wake up in the morning.
Me neither. What's funny that, like thinking about your own cancer, right? Like I'm thinking about it all the time, but in how can I help people? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As in terms of, or like, is it back or whatever, right? Or is it worse or better? How did you deal with those fears and the anxiety in the early days, right? When you knew, like our stories obviously diverge in the fact that I had surgery and they said, look, it's super aggressive in young adult cancer. You have young adult colon cancer. It's super aggressive. It's coming back. Like you've got to do chemo, right? So I had all this pressure. And so for me, the fear was of the recurrence. For you, the fear was it's there, right? And like, is it spreading? Is it going to take over? Which to me is so much more palpable, right? How'd you deal with that?
Well, not long after I was diagnosed, the summer I was diagnosed, I went to New Mexico to clear my head and to spend some time figuring out how I'm going to, first of all, leave my career. And I had no money, but I did own my apartment. So I was like, I'm going to sell my apartment and I'm going to live off of that. And I'm going to be at the time I called myself a full-time healing junkie. Like that's what I wanted. But I also knew I had to figure out a way where the fear wouldn't just make me bedridden, and I went to this lecture at this Zen monastery. And after the lecture, I knew that I had to stay there for many weeks and learn how to meditate.
Where was it?
In New Mexico, in Santa Fe. Okay. And so it's called Upaya, and it's a magical place. And so I learned meditation, and I spent a good portion of the summer there. And I was meditating like 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And
you'll get good at it when you do it that much.
Well, I've never been good at it, and I teach meditation, and I don't think I'm good at it. But I came back that summer, and I remember my friend saying, "There is this clarity and this levity and this peace about you," and it helped with that process to have this tool to be able to just quiet my mind and like not attached to my thoughts and not attached to my fears. And but I gotta be honest with you, I had this turning point because I was going pretty hard on the detoxing and in the beginning the macrobiotic diet and then the raw food diet and everything that went along with it, from wheatgrass multiple times a day to wheatgrass enemas and colonics, and I was just up and up and up and up on how to like heal my body and detox my life, and I was following everything really, really strictly. And at times I was happy and at times I was not happy. And I started to realize like the unhappiness is also a part of what's a problem for healing. And if my scan, like sometimes my tumors would shrink, and sometimes some would shrink and some would grow, but they pretty much stayed the same, which was stable. And every time I go to my doctor, he would just say, your blood work looks great. They're basically not, like, I can't say that just think of them like warts at this point, just keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. But it was never good enough for me to hear that. I didn't pat myself on the back and think of it like a victory. I was like, oh, I failed again. So I double down and double down. Mm-hmm. And the more I did that, the more the meditation wasn't helping and the more stress I was feeling. And so I finally decided to check into this clinic, which I don't really want to talk about the name of it, but there were some really good things that I experimented with there. And it was high doses of IV vitamin C therapy and hydrogen peroxide and ozone therapy. And actually, this is something that I've never even talked about with my own audience. So thank you for pulling it out of me so I can share this with my people too. And I stayed there for 21 days. I was fasting the whole time, and I was, doing daily colonics and lymphatic therapy. And I felt so sick. I felt so incredibly ill. But, I know my body was shifting like, if I thought I had detoxed before, I had never detoxed like this. But the treatments got to be so intense that my veins collapsed. And so I had a port placed in so that I could get the high doses of vitamin C. And I was not doing well. Like, I was not feeling great. But more than anything, to be totally honest with you, and this can help so many people, there's a lot of goodness in these treatments, but I'm just telling my story. I think my spirit was breaking. And it takes a lot to break my spirit. But I felt like a patient for the first time. And when I went back and got scanned, and my biggest tumor had definitely shrunk more than it had normally. But still, it was not enough to say, like, wow, this is a big deal. Keep doing what you're doing now, right? He was just like, great, just keep doing what you're doing. And I said, he said that when I was, following my lifestyle that is really healthy and what you talk about and what I talk about, and I was a lot happier. He said the same thing when I'm doubling down, doing more and more treatments to try to cure something that may not be curable. And the thing about the place that I was at is there was no end in sight. So there wasn't like, this is going to be done in 6 months. It'd be like, I don't know, this could be years where we have to do this kind of treatment. And it was all out of pocket. So it was super expensive. And there would be a time where I could no longer afford it. And so I just said, I'm done. This experience has taught me that I'm done trying to cure myself. I'm going to do this healthy lifestyle, this abundant lifestyle that's filled with good nutrition, a healthy mindset, movement, a strong connection to spirit, community, doing my best to create a non-toxic environment in my home, what I put on my body, in my body, and so on. I'm going to do this for Kris and not cancer. And I'm going to live in a peaceful way. I'm going to do my best to coexist with this disease, and stability is enough for me. I don't need to be in remission.
So perfectly articulated.
Thanks.
It's just such an important message, because, oh man, there's so many things I want to touch on that you said. But the one thing about the problem with clinics, people ask me all the time, I want to go to a clinic. Where should I go? And I have a short list of clinics that I can give somebody. Okay, here's some you should look into. But I also, in the same breath, will say, listen, clinics are expensive. They can be 40 grand for 3 weeks, 50 grand for 3 weeks. The cheap ones are 20 for 3 weeks. And nobody gets cured in 3 weeks. No. Now, there are people that go in, depending on what their stage and their physical condition are. There are many people that go in and have improvement in 3 weeks, like you did. But the therapies are very intensive. You feel like a patient, right? You are a patient, in a clinic. And then you have to go back home to your life, which may be a big stress mess of a life. And so yours was different because you'd already made these massive changes to your life before you went. So you went back to your already pretty great, reorganized, health promoting life. But a lot of folks just try to escape their unhealthy life by going to a clinic, and then they have to come home to the life that made them sick, in my opinion. And,
that's right.
Yeah, and then they don't continue to get well a lot of times.
I think you have a really good point. And so I had been 5 years into changing my life, and I had been, like I said, I was in a professional training program from acrobatics. Then I studied at Hippocrates. I became a health coach. There's so many things that I did prior to taking it up to the next level. And that took me about 5 years to kind of find what was working for me. And it changes. And I think that you and I have both agree about this, and we both have had conversations. As you continue to heal, or for me, thrive with cancer, or, whatever it is, even if you don't have cancer, your healthy living practice changes over time. So it's important for us not to be rigid and be like, this is the only way to do it, because it may be different in a couple years from now, depending on where you are in your life and how old you are and so on. And so I think your point about going places, it can be a great jumping off point, especially if this is so new to you. That's why a place like Hippocrates was so great for me, because it was like for 9 weeks I was there, and I was like, I knew nothing about raw food. By the end of it, I'm like, I know about raw food, and I'm going to bring this back into my life. But I think that what happens for a lot of patients is when you're not in the container, you start to fall apart. Right? So it's important for us to create our own containers that actually work for us. And that's the most important thing, that it also works for you. It's not just because whatever teacher said to you, you have to do it this way or else. That never works. Right? But it's like taking the best, leaving the rest, and creating your own wellness and healing practice, I think, is what every one of us has to do. We have to write our own prescriptions and then follow them.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And I like to say this a lot, just to kind of hammer this point home, is that healing happens at home. Healing happens at home. Right?
That's so beautiful.
Right? It does.
Yeah.
And you have to create an environment where healing can happen. People do well at clinics because they get lots of treatments that can be beneficial. Sometimes they get great nutrition. Sometimes it's a little, whatever, but they get therapies that are helpful. And a lot of times it's, they're away from home, so the stress comes down.
Totally.
If they're at a clinic in Mexico and they're overlooking the ocean, or, or whatever. I mean, there are tangible benefits to just the rest and relaxation you get being away from home.
Yeah.
And, it's funny. I don't know if I've ever told this story. Here's a new story Kris has never told.
Yay!
In 2003, when I was feeling these abdominal pains, that I was avoiding, like you were avoiding yours, I was having these pains, and they started sometime early in the year. I don't know when, but let's just say in the spring, I guess. But later, toward the end of the summer, I went on a cruise, and the whole cruise, I didn't have a single pain.
Wow.
Yeah, didn't have a single pain. And I thought, oh, cool. I guess whatever it was, I guess it's sorted out. And then I got back home and the pain came back, started up again.
Well, I love that you said that healing happens at home. And I think that's the piece that I've continued to explore for myself. So what does it look like in my kitchen? What does it look like now that I run my own business? Like, how can healing be a part of my day-to-day life? How can a healthy lifestyle be a part of my day-to-day life without it overtaking my life? Because I'm a big believer in progress, not perfection, right? As soon as we go for perfection, we're creating stress in our lives. There's no such thing. So how can we make all of these practices that you and I talk about, whether it's rebounding or, for me, it's hiking. I love hiking. And at 5:30 today, we're going for an hour-long hike. And it's probably going to be raining, but it's like, I can't wait for that, because it's not just for my body, it's for my stress, it's for my mind, it's for my spirit. So each and every one of us can do that. We can make these lifestyles work for us. They don't have to be rigid, they can be fluid, and they can bring you so much joy, and overall make you happier, healthier, and live longer. That's it.
That's it. Those are the things everybody wants. And I'm glad you brought up, that part of your story is so great, that where you had the revelation that, like, okay, I'm going to be happy with what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is enough, right? I've decided what I'm doing is enough, because I experienced this, and I know a lot of people that follow me and are in the Square One program in our private group and stuff, are probably right now, some of them are struggling with the anxiety of trying to be perfect, right? The perfect protocol, trying to cram everything in every day, trying to and getting it worked up and getting anxiety. Is it enough? Am I doing it enough? What else can I be doing? Can I be doing more? And I'm trying to repeat what you said, and I don't know how you said it, but what I say is like, you just have to find what works for you. Don't worry about the rules necessarily, and just make it work for you. Like, create your plan, take all these principles, incorporate them into your life any way you can. And the easy example of this is like, there are people who would say, oh, you have to drink your juice right out of the juicer, or it's no good. Right?
I used to believe that, and now
I did too.
Like, there was a 2-day-old juice in my fridge where I literally went, that's good.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. So, but I read that kind of information in 2004, but I was like, I can't, like, I have to work. Like, so I'm just going to make a big batch in the morning for the whole day. I'll make all my juice for the day in the morning, and that's the way I'm doing it. And that's right. It's like, I can't, like, I have to, this has to be sustainable, right?
That's so great. That's so great that you had the wherewithal to understand that, because I was back then following the rules, and I was scared if I didn't juice a certain way and drink it right away. Or back when I was in macrobiotics, they said, like, if you don't measure your miso and then take a knife and like make sure there's no extra, then you're going to be too yang. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what that means, but I think it's bad.
Too yang.
Oh my God. And so it's just like, that's not how healing happens. And when you said what you said earlier, when people ask you, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? Am I doing enough? I'm doing all these things. And, you've got this self-care to-do list a mile long and you're barely halfway through it by noon. I'd say the answer is you can have more joy. Like, what can you do to bring more joy and happiness into your life? Is it hanging out with your best friend? Is it going and spending time with your family? Is it being a part of a community or a prayer group or a Zen monastery? Like, what's going to give you joy? Because if you are at that place where you're just like vibrating in fear and wondering what the next thing you can do is because you're terrified and you don't think you're doing enough, you need to take it down a notch. That's your prescription. Yeah.
And for me, when I think like, what can I do to add more joy? It's always another coffee enema.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's all. Just one more coffee enema and I will be content.
No, it's never that way.
Yeah. So listeners and viewers, yes. I mean, there's this balancing act, right? Because I encourage people to take massive action, and I know you do too. Massive life-changing action. Eliminate everything in your life that may be contributing to your disease, and let's replace those things with what we know are health-promoting foods and habits and thoughts and emotions, right? And relationships. And it's a massive undertaking to change your life in this dramatic way. And so I on one hand, I'm encouraging people to do this. Yeah. And I also acknowledge that can produce a little stress because it can be a little intimidating. And the day-to-day management of your new healthy lifestyle can be a little bit intimidating and stress-producing. So, there is a balancing act that every person has to find on their own, where they have made, they've taken big action. They've changed all the big stuff, and there's probably little things that they could change and tweak and all that. But I like to say, don't let the little things get in the way of the big things.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think that our bodies are more resilient than we think. And so for some people, like you and I are very similar. My clinic story aside, I'm a massive action type of person too. I actually thrive there because I get very excited about new things and feeling better, and I'm like, yeah. But if I wasn't wired that way and I started to feel more and more overwhelmed and isolated and lonely and just depressed, I would say back off a little bit. Don't totally throw out what we're teaching here, but back off a little bit so you can bring your joy and your light forward, and then we can start to add things. But I think also another thing I want to say is that so often what I see people do is like look for the next bell or whistle or shiny object that could potentially cure cancer. Like, have you heard about this new thing? Or have you heard about that new supplement or this new thing? And I'm like, none of that. To me, it's all accessories in some way, in some regard, if you don't have the basic lifestyle principles in place. So this is like the infrastructure of your healing.
Foundation.
And
yeah.
it's the foundation. And then we can build from there. And it's not to say that other wonderful new things that come along can be even more instrumental in our healing, recovery, or stability in my case. But you got to get that foundation solid. So if you're chasing your tail, running after the latest thing that you saw on this blog or in that newsletter or in this magazine article, and your foundation isn't solid, dump the noise and get grounded.
Yeah. Yes. The supplements and the therapies are the things that I feel like people tend to chase after without addressing the foundational elements of health and healing, which is like, why I created the Square One course. It was kind of like, hey, like there's all this stuff out there you can do, but this is what's most important that you do first before you go chasing after anything else. And so anyway, that's the part where I plug my course.
Yeah, it's a good course. It's a good thing to plug. But it's because it's the foundation. It's all the pieces that, people have to understand. And I think it's so important. And the truth is that we have to understand it whether we have cancer or not. Because I believe that we're all here to share our light. We're here to share our light. We're here to share our unique goodness and to uplift each other because we need each other. And so we're more likely going to do it if we feel good.
Oh, yeah.
So feeling good is the goal.
Yeah, if you feel like crap, you don't want to help anybody.
No.
I've never felt better than when I'm serving someone else, right? Like everybody's heard, like it's better to give than to receive. But like giving isn't just giving a present, right? It's like giving your time, giving your energy, right?
Yeah.
Like just focusing on how can I help somebody else or multiple somebodies. And that's when I feel my best. That's when I'm most excited about what I'm doing, and I feel the most satisfied. And days where I'm just focused on me, not intentionally, but whatever, it happens. At the end of those days, I'm usually just kind of grumpy and not even in a great mood. And it's like, and then the next day I'll be focused on somebody else or something. And then I'm like, oh, I feel great today. Oh, yeah, that's why.
That's right.
I forget,
And if you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling your best, or if you're not feeling happy in your body and your heart and your spirit, then you're more likely to shut down that light. And so that's always my why behind why I'm doing this, why I'm taking care of myself, is so that I can feel happy and strong and healthy, so that I can share what I came to share.
That's good, Miss Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Work.
That's good. Okay, so let me think. I have a laundry list of questions I want to ask you. You're a fan of plant-based eating.
I am.
Are you not?
Fan. Yes, I am a very big fan.
Can people love to ask me about legumes and lectins? And I have answered these questions often, but I'd love to hear your answer about, do you worry about legumes, phytates, lectins, and things of that nature?
No, I don't worry about any of that. I think my nutrition director and I just wrote a great article about that at chriscarr.com. I can give you a link to it. I think it's really awesome. And she knows way more than I do, which is why I hire her. I think it's so easy to cherry pick, and I think that there are these trends that I'm seeing right now to start to like attack plants, and to me it absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. This is like we're talking about the plant kingdom, where we get our vitamins, minerals, enzymes, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and I think that has been rested. Like it's really just about don't eat them raw. Like sprouted is different, but it's all about how they're prepared. And I'm not sure even if that's true for all beans, but I don't think it's an issue. I mean, maybe for people who have leaky gut, maybe for some folks with autoimmune, you might have to be more careful. But to attack beans and honestly to attack grains, to me, is whole grains specifically, and for some people gluten-free, I think is really counterproductive. And my goal is to help people get more of the plant kingdom in their diets in a healthy way. So eating more plant protein, eating more whole grains, and eating, certainly, I love how you talk about overdosing on fruits and vegetables. You can't go wrong there. And where you can go wrong is with the standard American diet, as all of your listeners know, and eating too much animal products, especially from factory farms. Eating too many inflammatory foods, eating foods with growth hormones like dairy, or foods that create sensitivities in your body. And for some people, that's gluten. And for other people, it's nightshades. So I think we all have to experiment, but just because, the latest book or the hottest blogger comes out saying that beans are the devil doesn't necessarily mean that's true. I disagree.
We both disagree. And I mean, it just, there's a formula for sort of like, for writing a best-selling diet book. You kind of need to be a doctor. So if you're a doctor of any sort, that's a good start. But then B is you find some kind of, you create some kind of food fear, right? Around a food that people thought was healthy. So wheat belly, grain brain, the plant paradox, like all of these books have really just created food fear, to convince people that, no, the reason you're unhealthy is because you're eating the wrong vegetables.
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah.
And
and the reason you're fat, that's the big, one of the big claims, like, you're fat because you're eating the wrong vegetables. And I'm like, no. Exactly.
Look, you and I know a lot of folks who have healed their body naturally. So I have a program called Crazy Sexy You. It's a 21-day diet and lifestyle program. It's a total wellness program. There's fitness videos, there's meditation, and basically my nutrition staff and I, that has multiple RDs. I do not have a degree, but I hire people who do. I always like to say that the letters behind my name are life, all caps. We've created this plan and we tested it for 3 years before we brought it to market. And then we've put close to 10,000 people through it. So over the last 3 years. And the stories of recovery are absolutely incredible, from everything from type 2 diabetes to people with cancer having better scans to, blood work, to the stuff that I didn't even know existed in the world, to Crohn's, IBS, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis. Why? Because I've taken out everything. My team and I have taken out everything that's inflammatory. And what are we giving people? Beans, grains, soy products, lots of vegetables, juices, smoothies, all the things that we talk about. And there's a lot of cooked food in it, and they're healing, or stabilizing or feeling better, losing that weight. And also just feeling the power of what I believe a peaceful plant-based diet can do to your overall body, mind, and spirit. So that's all I have to say about that.
I know. It's.
But I appreciate you bringing it up, because it's like the question that I keep getting more and more, and I'm like, I guess I really have to pay attention to this, because usually I'm like, yeah, don't worry, eat your beans.
Every time I do a Q&A now, somebody asks me about. It used to be wheat belly, grain brain. That's kind of past, but now it's the plant paradox and phytates that people are all scared of.
Yeah.
And then the ketogenic diet.
Right, which neither one of us are fans of. The thing I want to say about grains, though, because I have had the opportunity to work with thousands of women who are either older than myself and have gone through menopause, or because of many years of yo-yo dieting or whatever reason, they have damaged metabolisms. And when your metabolism is damaged, and for some people after they hit menopause, sometimes grains can be a little harder on folks when it comes to losing weight. And so in those cases, I say just pull back on the serving size, like a small serving size, a half a cup, as opposed to like a big cup of brown rice and whatever else you're going to have with your amazing bean chili. So if you find that like you want to lose weight and it's not coming off because you're incorporating grains, then again, they can still be a healthy part of your diet, filled with vitamins, fiber, prebiotics, which are so important for our gut health. But experiment. Like you and I have been saying, we're each very, very different. But I think that fundamentals or the foundation, as you said, of the plant world, that is the medicine for us. Certain things may not work for everybody, like nightshades, example. But again, still, this is the medicine.
That's right. It's good. So here's a fun question. If you had to eat the same thing every day for the rest of your life, okay. There's two. It's a two-part question, but the first part is, what would your breakfast be, and your lunch be, and your dinner be? So you get 3 meals, right?
Okay.
But that's it. 3 meals for the rest of your life.
Oh my goodness. This is so hard.
You'll play.
You know me. I think my 5th book is Crazy Sexy Juice, and so I love juicing. I love smoothies. They're part of my diet every single day without fail. And so I couldn't live without a juice or a smoothie. But if you're forcing me,
the smoothie can be a meal. That's a meal.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll let you have your juices. That's fine.
Okay. I need my green juice, and my green juice is really simple. It's like cucumber, celery, kale, apple, lemon, ginger type thing. I have a lot of other recipes in the book that are far more titillating and tantalizing, but at home, that tends to be what it is. I need to have avocado toast as part of this because, like, I just live for it. I could eat it right now. I love it so much.
You're so trendy.
I was on avocado toast before all of the foodie Instagrammers were on avocado toast.
Yes, I was raw way before raw was cool, and I know you were too.
Cool. No, it was not cool at all.
It wasn't cool. Yes, when I was eating raw food, and of course I still eat a lot of raw food, but exclusively raw, and even the 80% raw for years. Yeah, can I tell a funny story?
Yes.
I live in Memphis, and in early 2004, I was seeing this nutritionist, and this is full circle because, you went out and found a doctor who supported you, right? The first doctor I saw told me I was insane if I didn't do chemotherapy. Never went back, and I found a naturopath nutritionist guy, and then he referred me to an integrative oncologist who actually did look a lot like Dr. Moody.
Dr. Moody.
Yeah. And this man was in his 70s and had just silver hair and had come out of retirement. I'm trying not to make this interview about me, but it's a quick story. So he comes out of retirement because he loved practicing, and he started incorporating IV vitamin C and glutathione IV and other non-FDA approved but non-toxic therapies because he had spent his whole career treating cancer patients, had seen that most of those treatments didn't produce lasting health, right? And so the nutritionist guy said, "Hey, there's a raw food, support group, and you should go check it out." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay," because I'd been raw for like a few weeks or whatever. And so I went to this raw food support group at Whole Foods, and it was so weird. It was so strange.
Find your people.
No, they were not my people. It was so weird. It was like 15 people, and there was one lady that was kind of like a group leader or whatever, and then everybody else. But like, I don't know if it was just poorly organized or what, but no one was friendly. It was super awkward, and I don't know. It was, and everybody just seemed weird. And so
it's
I never
come a long
went
way
back.
since those days.
Yeah. Well, now all the raw foodists on Instagram are just like super hot.
Yes.
And
got
like
their durian and their coconut, and I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing.
Yeah, living in the jungle and whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's come a long way, but no, I felt so isolated and so alone, and nobody understood what I was doing at all.
Well, I think that's why, going back to why we started our worlds, it's because we felt isolated by ourselves in the beginning, and we didn't want other people to feel that way, and we wanted to share and create community, which is such a big part of healing. And as you were talking, I wanted to clarify one thing. So I'm still a huge fan of IV vitamin C and other IV treatments. Huge fan, and I still do them. Like, I'm going to London to teach in 2 weeks, and I'll go get a treatment before I go because I just want to keep my immune system strong, and there's so much on the stuff. Sorry. And the planes, and so I still do this. I just don't do it at extreme doses to try to cure disease. I do it for like maintenance and because it's great for my immune system and it keeps me from getting colds and staying strong.
Hey, do you know about Sufficient C?
No.
Okay, write this down. Sufficient C, everyone listening, write it down, is a really, really great non-GMO vitamin C powder.
Oh, cool.
And it's delicious. It has like peach flavor and it's green tea extract in it.
Chris,
I think that's right.
Right.
You'll love it. Yeah, you'll love it. And it's great for travel too, because like, you know, you can put a scoop in a
that's great.
water bottle and just sip it on the plane or whatever, and it actually tastes good. So
that's awesome. Thank you for the tip. I still eat a huge salad every day, like your kind of salad.
Awesome, yeah.
With everything, salad. Lots of good fats, seeds and nuts and oil cured olives and avocado, and I love tempeh. I know some people don't like tempeh, but I think the trick is so what I do to cook tempeh, let me tell you, everybody. So you boil it first for like 10 minutes, or you can steam it, but I just boil it. And I use like shoyu, which is a gluten-free, yucky stuff-free soy sauce, for lack of a better way to describe it. And I just put a bunch of shoyu in the water, and that really also does pull out any of that bitter flavor. And then I have a skillet, which I love, my like iron skillet. Mm-hmm. And I cook with avocado oil because it's really high heat, durable. Mm-hmm. And I'll just cook with a little bit of avocado oil, sea salt, and pepper, my tempeh, both sides, until it's like a little brown. So nutty, it's so flavorful, it's so delicious. Cut it all up. It's almost like my croutons in my salad. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's warm on there.
It's warm, it's happy, and it's just like all the crunchy good stuff from my garden. I don't have problems with nightshades or gluten. So tomatoes and carrots and snap peas and you name it, it's just in there. If it looks good, it's green. It still doesn't seem like it needs to go into the compost. It's in that salad. I'm like, you still got a day and you get in my salad.
Yeah, or if it's like I've got some bananas downstairs right now that I'm like, it's freezer time for you.
It's freezer time. You have crossed over, but I will
revive you. You are too soft to be enjoyed.
I will resurrect you. And then I'm just a huge fan of like what I call Buddha bowls. So I love quinoa, and I'll my husband calls it bachelor food because he doesn't know how to make a lot of stuff because I do all the cooking. But whenever I go away and he's not accompanying me, he's usually like, I made a Buddha bowl and big salads. Like he can handle that. And he's also the juice and smoothie. He's really good at juicing and blending. So I know he's going to live on like healthy plant-based food when I'm gone. Although he is not a vegan plant-based like I am. So he will usually.
He's just eating beans out of the can when you're gone.
Yeah, or occasionally a steak is what I was trying to say. He's like,
sneaking one in.
Cats away!
Yeah. Hey, thanks for bringing him up. Tell the story. Tell the Brian story.
Oh, okay. So Brian is he's my husband, and he was the editor of my film. And so
how'd you meet him? How'd you find him?
We actually met many years ago. We were both in different relationships, and he was in a band, and I was dating a guitar player, and their bands were friends, and they were friends. And so I knew of him. I just didn't know that many years later he had kind of left drumming. He was like, I'm not going to be a professional drummer, but I love editing. And so he became an editor, and he was working on big feature films, and he used to edit for Discovery Channel and Frontline and New York Times, and my friend said, Brian, the drummer from way back when, well, he's actually like a really accomplished editor. You've got all this footage. You want to make this film. Why don't you talk to him? And I needed to cut a trailer to submit it to an industry night where I could find somebody who would like pick me up as a rep and then try to shop the film. And he cut the trailer. We were chosen to do a presentation on this industry night with all of these film reps, and there was only 3 film trailers that were chosen. And one of the reps picked us up, and then they sold Crazy Sexy Cancer to TLC and then the Oprah Winfrey Network. And so through the process, we fell in love. He was editing the film, and he's also a great DP, and I was shooting, and he was shooting, and he helped me become a much better filmmaker. He's like, there are other things to focus on, but let's get some cutaways. There's something called B-roll. You're not sitting all the time. So
B-roll. The world of B-roll.
World of B-roll. And so
you hadn't shot it all. He helped you shoot some.
No, he helped me. Yeah, he came in like a year into the project, and then he helped shoot the rest of it and edited the film. And then at the end of the project, at the end of the film, we get married, and it's in the film. So I got a husband.
Folks.
I got a husband.
Out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And did the film get picked up just from the trailer, or was it already done?
Got picked up from the trailer,
and so then you had a deal, and you're like, okay, and so now we got to really make this thing.
Yeah, so they gave me the finishing funds to make it. They gave me about $250,000 to make it, and Lord knows, making a feature film back then was really expensive, and it was a big deal. And up until then, everything had been on credit cards, or I had borrowed cameras. I have so many people in the industry because of my previous career, so a lot of my friends were just volunteering their time.
You're just in the perfect position to do it.
Yeah. And again, it was a labor of love, and it was something that everybody told me would never get made. Everybody tried to get me to change the title. And they said nobody will want to watch a film on television, on network television, at the time, cable television, about a girl with cancer and all these other young women with cancer with that title. And I was just like, yeah, I don't like that information either.
I'm doing it anyway.
I'm doing it. We're good.
Right. Yeah, I don't care. I'm doing it.
Yeah. They were wrong.
Someone told me I shouldn't call the blog Kris Beat Cancer because it sounded like crispy cancer.
Yeah, that's right. You told me that.
And my friend was right. He was right. And I was like, yeah, no, that's fine. I do own chrisbeatcancer.com too. So, if anybody just happens to type that in, they'll find me. But yeah, kind of a similar thing. I'm like, nah, I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, I'm good. I got this.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Yeah, it's just such a wonderful story. I love your story. It's so good.
Thank you.
I just know how, it just gets me so excited. Like, one of the things that I figured out pretty early on is when I started my little blog with 0 followers, which is the opposite, because you already had followers and you're like, I have a blog now, and everybody's like, yay. And I was like, nobody knows me, but here I go.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing, if it makes you feel any better. Like, I had no clue.
Sure.
I was just writing.
I thought in the beginning, well, I'll just share my story because there's got to be people that are looking for this information, because I was desperate to find somebody that I could connect with. And you mentioned connection earlier, and you reaching out and following these other women. And like, it's interesting that I wanted connection, but I also didn't, the raw food support group didn't work out for me. Like, it was like, nobody here's even, it was too awkward to ask people, like, do you have cancer too, or something?
Yeah.
And nobody was really my age. They all were kind of older. I was 26, and everybody, like, it was a lot of mostly women, and they were like 40s, 50s, 60s, right. I was like, oh, I don't know. And so then starting the blog was like, I just knew there were people like me that were desperate to find anybody, right? Because I guess you didn't really have any other, well, you went to Hippocrates and some things, so I'm sure you connected with a lot of folks that were really into it, right?
Yeah, super into the lifestyle, but I didn't know anybody with the type of cancer that I have. And I've only met a few people since that time. And it's just so great to meet people that actually have my disease. And, some people haven't done it as well, and some people haven't lived. And, that can be hard sometimes for me. But it's part of what goes with the territory. Mm-hmm. I think that I've always, like, for a while, I was sort of like this very strange cancer person to people, because like, it's sort of there, sort of not, slow growing, stable, but it's stage 4, but you never had treatment. And so people didn't know what to do with me, and they still don't, to tell you the honest truth. Like, I call myself a thriver now. My second book was Crazy Sexy Cancer Survivor, and I wish I called it Thriver. And I think of myself as a survivor, but I call myself a thriver because I'm still trying to make it very clear to people that it's not gone. And it's because I want the people who live with a disease to be able to relate to somebody else. You know, it's for them that I say that, but it's also, there's so much baggage around it. I can give a 2-hour presentation and talk about everything I've talked about, and, you know, that I have the disease. It's currently not active, but it is there. I call myself a thriver. I live with it. And somebody will come up to me at a book signing and say, congratulations for beating cancer. Congratulations for being in remission. And so I still have a really hard time getting that through to people, because I don't think anybody wants to believe that you can live with cancer, because it's kind of scary. You know what I mean? Like, some people just tune it out. Like, nope, you look good. You said you're good. You don't have it. That's how I can handle this information. But that's not always the case. And I think more and more patients need to, there are patients who are going to listen to this, who are going to say, hey, you know, I have an incurable disease too that I'm living with, and I can thrive with it. I can have a normal life. I can take care of myself for me, not just the disease. And now I see somebody I can relate to. That's
why you're such a huge light. I mean, I'm always pointing people to you. And we, so in the last module of my Square One course, which is about testing and monitoring, there's this little bit in the beginning where I kind of talk about, like, here's what to expect on your healing journey. It could go a lot of different ways, but one of the ways it could go is nothing changes. Right? Mm-hmm. Nothing changes.
Yeah. And that's good.
And that's good. But your doctor may twist it and make it sound bad. And so I try to prep people for this, because unfortunately a lot of doctors will say, oh, well, you know, your tumor's still there, so, you know, what you're doing isn't working. Which is like terrible. It's a terrible thing to say to somebody. When I would say to them, oh, your tumor's still there, but it hasn't grown? Yes.
That's good news. Yeah, great. This is progress.
Right. Yeah. If it doesn't grow, it can't kill you. Right. This is really great. And so, or, you know, if it grows a little bit, but at a much slower rate, this is great. You're slowing it down. You have to slow it down first before it'll stop growing, before it'll shrink. I mean, there is a process. Yeah. You know, I'm preaching to the choir, but
no, I just love that you say that. And it's so important, because patients need to hear that. It's a lifeline. And, you know, you asked me earlier at the top, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, if you wanted to finish your thought. You asked me earlier, like, how I dealt with fear, and I talked about going to this monastery and learning to meditate. And I think over time, you know, deciding the goal isn't to cure myself, it's to learn to live with cancer. And for me, it's all about accepting myself. And when those moments come up, when I'm nervous, and they don't come up very often, I get scanned every 2.5 years now. But sometimes, not always, sometimes I'll get some of those jitters before the scan, or I'll get some butterflies, and all I do is soothe myself. I think we each need to learn how to soothe ourselves, and some people can soothe themselves through faith, like you. You know, you've got a strong connection to your faith, and that's very comforting and soothing. And for other people who might not resonate with that, you know, we each need to find that thing that helps us through the dark times, or the difficult times rather. And for me, it's just, I love you, I accept you, I've got your back, no matter what those scans say. I'm in this with you. You've got the best co-captain. I can't think of a better person to lead this expedition than you, me, we, us. We're going to get through this. And then on the other side, we'll come up with a game plan. And usually that game plan is to go celebrate, because it's great news, right? But if it
Chili's!
Yeah, it's like, just come kidding. On, y'all. Let's go. But if it wasn't,
TGI Fridays,
we would figure it out.
Yeah.
You know? And so
I love that.
So anyway, that's I think that's my biggest thing to talk about, and I don't articulate it very well, because it's sort of hard to express the relationship that I have with myself.
You expressed it well. It makes perfect sense, and I love the word soothe, and I don't use that word enough. It's a good word. It's really good. I mean, it's so apropos.
Well, you're a parent. You know, I'm a parent to a dog, and she definitely needs soothing, but you know what it's like when you have to soothe your children, because they're really upset about something, and that what they want more than anything is to be soothed by you. And what I think we forget is that we still need that from ourselves. If we can't get it from our friends, our partner, our parents, or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, as long as we can get it from ourselves first and foremost. Everything else is a bonus, obviously. You want to be in healthy relationships. but we grow up and we forget that we still need that ability to soothe.
We do. Oh, you reminded me of, well, as you were talking, I was thinking about, as you were talking to yourself, I was thinking about me talking to myself and how I had to learn how to stop criticizing myself and judging myself and being so hard on myself. And yeah, and how I had to, really start, something you said early in your story, which resonated with me, was that, I didn't like myself either, right? Like at the core, I was trying to do a lot of good things and I was trying to prove a lot of stuff to the people around me and to the world, right? But I really didn't like myself. And so I had to learn to start encouraging myself when no one else would, right? I'm not saying that no one else would, but you know what I mean? Like day to
the
day,
level at which you needed it.
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, like I had to start telling myself, like, you're healed, you're healthy, you're strong, you're well, like you can do this, like, and it's silly as it seems to some people. It really makes you feel so good, like it works so well.
It does.
When you talk to yourself and you like encourage yourself, right?
Yes. I think that that's a big takeaway that we should, like make the crescendo of this conversation. Encourage yourself on this healing path. Speak kindly to yourself. Have your own back. Don't quit on yourself because you're so special and magical. Each and every one of us are, and we need to be our own champions and cheerleaders as part of our healing. It's essential. And for some of us, it means we have to rewire how we speak to ourselves. And it also might mean that we have to reprogram because maybe as children we were treated poorly or we were spoken to in a way that doesn't teach us how to respect ourselves. But we're resilient and we can rewire that right now. And I think, I'm going to make a bold statement, I think that it's essential that we do. I'm not so sure how successful we can be in life if we don't.
I agree. Yeah, there's a proverb that says, as a man thinks, so he is, right? As a man thinks, so he is. Like what you think about yourself, you become. And if you're always telling yourself, like, I'm stupid, I'm ugly, no one likes me, right? Then that is what you will become, right? But if you can also catch yourself right in those moments and say, like, no, I'm not stupid. I'm smart. I'm capable. I can do this. I belong here. Yeah. That was a big one for me.
That's beautiful.
Because I've been, like, I don't know, when you're in a situation where you don't know anybody and it's like you're intimidated and you're surrounded by other people that maybe you're intimidated by or whatever, and you feel like an imposter, right? And so I've had to just tell us, like, no, I belong here.
Yeah, in a big fat way.
Yeah, I belong here. Like, it's as silly as it sounds, but I think a lot, you've dealt with it, I've dealt with it. I think it's just human nature, right? Yeah,
and we still will deal with it. But that's where the self-soothing comes in. It's not that you'll never have bad thoughts about yourself. It's just that when you do, you catch them and you're like, oh, Toots, what's happening? Hey, you want to sit with me? What's going on? Yep. Let's clear this. Because we got stuff to do.
Yep, we got stuff to do. We can't let this negativity and insecurity and self-doubt get in the way.
Right.
Because it wants to.
Yeah, and ultimately, going back to our whole reason for having this amazing conversation, create more inflammation in our bodies and our lives. That's what we don't.
Yes. We do want that. Get out. Well, on behalf of myself and Dr. Moody...
What a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Kris. Thank you so much, Kris.
Thank you, Dr. And thank you, Kris.
Kris, you're the best. I just have so much love for you. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And I'm super pumped about the Healing Cancer World Summit. Let's just briefly plug it. Even though I plugged it in the beginning, but let's just briefly plug that.
Yeah, so it's 7 days, and each day is a different topic. And it's, taking control of your health and the healing cancer diet and lifestyle. And I talk about radical self-love and acceptance and the spiritual journey and, all of the pieces of the puzzle, like the foundation that you and I talked about. And I interviewed the people that inspire me. There's been a lot of people along the way. The people who inspire me to take back my health and to take better care of myself and to reduce my stress. We have a whole day on stress. And I know a lot of people in the cancer world, and I'm so excited for this first year. And I'm so happy that you're a part of it and that we're friends now, because your interview is so spectacular. And I know that your listeners and my listeners are going to get so much from it. And so it's free, and you have all the information, as you said. Each day we have 3 different world-renowned speakers, and I conducted all the interviews and really asked the questions that I knew that my folks have been wanting to know the answers to, but also that I needed the answers to at some point in my journey. So it's one of the most special things I've done. I haven't talked about cancer like this in many, many years. And to tell you the honest truth, just briefly, it was something I was considering doing for a lot of years, but there was a part of me that didn't want to go back and talk exclusively about cancer. And then my dad was diagnosed in 2016, and I thought to myself, I know too much, and my family's experience has taught us so much. And, putting together a game plan for very aggressive pancreatic cancer was a huge focus of my life in 2016. But I got to say that if we hadn't gone through the experience with me, the slow-growing, strange cancer, and everything we learned, it would have been a real learning curve for us. And I'm so grateful for the tools that I have. And that's when I realized, I got to do this. I can't not. And so anyway, it's my offering and gift to all of the people who I know and love who have cancer or don't want to have cancer, or have somebody in their life who has cancer, but they don't know how to support them. So I hope anybody listening who's interested will check it out.
I'm so glad you're doing it. I can't wait. It's going to be great. Again, there'll be a link. There's a link below the video if you're watching on the blog, below the video on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, just check the show notes, or just go to chrisbeatcancer.com. There will be a link right there. You'll see our interview there with links to the Healing Cancer World Summit 2018.
Yeah.
Grudge match. Okay, Kris, thank you. Thank you for your time. Talk soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please share this video. There are people in your life that need to hear Kris's amazing story, that need this encouragement and inspiration, and just need a fun hour and a half of us, cutting up.
Cutting up. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.